Hey, welcome to our channel. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss our latest content.
I was always the kind of guy who made it a point to keep his life balanced, methodical with my schedule, organized with our finances, careful with my family. I believed in structure, in the quiet reliability of a life well planned. It wasn't exciting, maybe, but it was good, it was solid. I'd been married to Lorelai for 20 years. She was the sweet, supportive woman who, as far as I knew, was perfectly content with the quiet routine we'd built together. Our life was a carefully tended garden, predictable, yes, but safe, and beautiful in its own way. Asher and Thea, our two teenage kids, were growing up in that garden, a home without extravagance, but full of my presence, full of our presence. We had dinner together almost every night. We talked about school, about my work at the firm, about vacation plans for the summer. We even laughed at the same old jokes I'd been telling for a decade, jokes that had become part of the family repertoire. They were our jokes. Life seemed to be following the right script, the one I had written in my head so many years ago. Then, one evening, Lorelai turned to me, a strange look in her eyes. A look I hadn't seen before, a flicker of something distant. "Caleb," she said, her voice soft. "I want to get in shape." I smiled. "That's great, Lori. That's fantastic." I thought it was wonderful that she wanted to take care of her health. It was just another piece of the puzzle falling into place. A healthy, balanced life. She often said she missed looking in the mirror and liking what she saw. Her words were quiet, almost a whisper to herself, but I heard them. So, when she found a physical transformation program, one that promised quick, radical results, I encouraged her. I told her to go for it. What could possibly be wrong with my wife wanting to feel good about herself? It was the right thing to do. The supportive thing. The next day, I paid for the entire package without a single question. I took care of the kids on the mornings when she trained. I even started making breakfast for everyone before heading to work, trying to make this new phase as smooth as possible for her. It seemed like just another part of our life script, a new, healthy chapter. I had no idea I had just paid for the demolition of my own world. And I was smiling while I did it. It started as a phase. Then, the phase turned into a priority, and the priority became a whole new lifestyle, one that, very quickly, seemed to exclude the rest of us. Lorelai started changing. First, on the outside, she lost weight so quickly it was startling. She gained defined muscles in her arms and legs, and she began dressing in ways I had never, ever seen before. Her old wardrobe, the comfortable sweaters, the modest dresses, it was all replaced with gym clothes, short shorts, tight tops. New sets arrived in packages almost every week. The traditional outfits we'd bought together on weekend trips were donated, without warning, without a word to me. Soon after, her behavior changed too. She created an Instagram account. It was focused solely on her fitness journey, her transformation. She posted before and after photos, workout videos, nutrition tips. Every like was a victory she celebrated out loud. Every compliment in the comments was read to the family at the dinner table, the same table where we used to talk about Asher's soccer practice and Thea's art projects. I tried to keep up. I really did, but I got lost in the new vocabulary Lorelai used. Terms like, set your goal, performance targets, fitness influencer. They started becoming part of our household lexicon, replacing conversations that used to involve the kids, our weekend plans, or anything ordinary. At first, I let it slide. I told myself it was just temporary excitement, that Lorelai was rediscovering a part of herself she'd lost. I was happy for her, wasn't I? But the mornings she left to train got longer. Sunday family lunches, a tradition for 15 years, were canceled because she needed to record content. She started eating dinner separately from us, at a different time. "My diet is different," she'd say, weighing out chicken and broccoli while we ate the lasagna I'd made. The kids began complaining about their mom's absence. Asher would just retreat into silence. But Thea would ask, "Where's Mom?" I told them to be patient. I tried to justify it. I defended Lorelai, even though, deep down, I didn't understand what was happening either. One day, I got home from work early. I saw Lorelai in the backyard, her phone propped up on a tripod. She was filming a video, doing push-ups and talking about personal growth and breaking limits. Thea was watching from the living room window, hugging a pillow to her chest. I walked over and put my hand on her shoulder. "Is everything okay, sweetie?" I asked. My daughter just looked up at me, her eyes glossy, and she said the words that hit me like a physical blow. She talks more to her phone than to us. The temporary excitement was no longer temporary, and for the first time, I felt a cold knot of fear tighten in my stomach. The weeks that followed felt like walking on a frozen lake, hearing the ice crack beneath my feet with every step. Lorelai started going out to events related to her program. She said she needed to be there to network, to build partnerships, to expand her digital presence. I didn't know what to think. Why was the woman who always hated being in the spotlight now posting daily videos with advice and personal challenges? Why didn't she ask about the kids' days anymore? Why did she seem to avoid being home when I was around? One night, she was getting ready for an event on the other side of town. I noticed she'd switched perfumes. It was something new, strong, musky, not the light, floral scent she had worn for 20 years. I asked her about the event. She responded with an automatic, rehearsed enthusiasm, like she was reading from a script for one of her videos. I tried to kiss her before she left. Simple goodbye kiss, but she turned her face away. Quickly. I'm in a hurry, she said, not looking at me. My rideshare is waiting, but I hadn't heard any car pull up. The street outside was silent. I stayed silent, too. I just watched her walk out the door. That night, she came home smiling, but avoided any conversation. She went straight to the bedroom and I heard the soft click of the door locking. I sat at the kitchen table for an hour, just staring at an untouched glass of water. This repeated for days, weeks. The kids started asking if we were fighting. Asher began going out more with his friends, staying out later. Thea locked herself in her room, blasting loud music through her headphone. The atmosphere in the house grew cold. Everyone was retreating into their own isolated space. I tried talking to Lorelai. I cornered her in the kitchen one night. Lori, what's going on with us? She sighed, a sound full of irritation. I'm tired, Caleb. I'm busy. I'm focused on my goals. You need to stop acting like you own me. Own her? I never wanted to own anyone, but I also didn't want to be invisible. I realized I wasn't being consulted about anything anymore. Lorelai made plans alone. She made decisions alone. And our joint bank account, it started showing expenses I didn't recognize. New workout gear, spa stays, clothes with absurd price tag. When I questioned her, she responded with short, clipped phrases, as if I were an obstacle, as if I were getting in her way. I started noticing the details I'd previously overlooked, or maybe, the details I had chosen to ignore. Her phone messages were always deleted. The calls she answered by walking into another room. The long showers she took right after her workouts. Sometimes she'd say she was training at one location, but her Instagram stories, accidentally tagged, would show her somewhere else entirely. I ignored it. I told myself I was being paranoid, overprotective, controlling. Just like she said, I ignored it until one day, I was looking for the jumper cables in the trunk of her car, and behind the spare tire, tucked away in the corner, I found it. A small suitcase. Inside, a few changes of neatly folded clothes and a toiletry bag, ready to go at a moment's notice. I swallowed hard. My mouth was suddenly dry. I tried to convince myself there was a logical explanation. Maybe it's for a weekend trip she's planning to surprise me with. But that was a lie. A lie I wanted to tell myself, because the alternative was too painful to even consider. That night, my hands trembling slightly, I reached out to Sabrina, our close friend, the woman who was like a sister to both of us. I told her everything, and for the first time, I said the words out loud, my voice cracking. Sabrina, I think Lorelai might be seeing someone else. Saying it out loud made it real. The fear had been a shadow, a whisper in the back of my mind. But now, it was a solid, heavy thing sitting in the room with me. Sabrina was shocked. But she didn't doubt me. On the contrary, she said she'd also noticed Lorelai's behavior was strange, distant. She just didn't know if she should interfere. It was Sabrina who suggested it. Caleb, do you remember Walter, your old neighbor from across the street? The one who used to be a PI? He hesitated. I felt ashamed, as if the betrayal were still just a possibility, and I was already condemning Lorelai prematurely. But deep down, I knew this wasn't paranoia. Something was very, very wrong, and I was finally ready to find out what it was. I met Walter the next afternoon at a quiet coffee shop. He was older now, with kind eyes that seemed to see right through me. I carried only the heavy gaze of a man who suspected too much and knew too little. I told him the essentials. No embellishment. No drama. I said I feared I was being cheated on, that something had changed in my wife, that her stories no longer added up. Walter listened silently, stirring his black coffee. At the end, he looked at me and asked one simple question. Do you really want to know the truth, Caleb? Even if it hurts? I nodded, unable to speak. It was the question I feared most, but also the one I needed to hear. Because deep down, part of me already knew the answer. All that was missing were the proofs. Walter started by explaining what we needed to observe. Departure times, inconsistent movements, social media patterns. He suggested we start with Lorelai's phone location history. I knew she used an iPhone, and that our family devices were synced through the cloud. I had never once thought to look. That evening, my heart pounding in my chest, I logged into our iCloud account. All it took was a few clicks to pull up a map covered in trails and timestamps. Her trails. At first, everything seemed normal. Home, the grocery store, the kids' school. But then, there were the gaps, the inconsistencies. Workouts scheduled at a downtown gym showed locations in a completely different neighborhood, and several records. On different days, at different times, all matched a single, specific address, a residential building in uptown Dallas. For a week, Walter carefully analyzed all the data I sent him. He built a table, dates, times, frequented locations. The pattern was undeniable. Lorelai would leave home in her workout clothes. She'd post stories from her car, talking about her training session, but the GPS showed she barely even passed by the gym. Instead, she'd stop at hotel parking lots, or that same residential building. It started looking too rehearsed to be a coincidence. My stomach churned with every new detail Walter sent over. Meanwhile, Sabrina was assigned a task. She created a fake profile and began interacting with Lorelai's fitness account. Slowly, she gained access to private content, to the interactions hidden from my view. And that's where a name surfaced. Roman Morrison, a young personal trainer, a specialist in radical transformations. He had dozens of female clients praising his results, and especially the personal attention he gave them. Sabrina pulled up his post history and found several likes from Roman on Lorelai's older photos, from before her transformation began. But the real clue was in an archived live stream. Sabrina sent me the link. I watched as Lorelai laughed and joked with her followers. She called Roman my guide. I saw his comments pop up in the chat, filled with inside jokes and flattery. It was more than professionalism. The intimacy. It slipped through the screen and hit anyone who was willing to see it. Walter did a simple data cross-check, a public records search. It took him less than 10 minutes. The residential address Lorelai frequently visited belonged to Roman. It was registered as his company's location, but the building had no studio, no gym, just apartments. The hardest blow came a few days later. Walter, through his old contacts, obtained security camera footage from a parking lot near that uptown apartment building. He sent me the file. It was password protected. He called me with the password. "Are you sure you're ready, son?" he asked. "I have to be," I said. I clicked play. My world crumbled, frame by frame. In at least 3 separate instances, Lorelai was seen parking her car, and a few moments later, Roman's car would pull in beside hers. The footage showed them talking intimately, laughing. It showed him placing a hand on the small of her back as they walked toward the building's entrance. It showed them entering together and leaving hours later. The footage had a date and a timestamp in the corner. There was nothing open to interpretation. The meetings were real. The times matched the days she claimed to be in intensive training sessions. This was no longer speculation. It was evidence. And the pain of seeing it confirmed was a physical thing, a weight that crushed the air from my lungs. I even wished, for a fleeting moment, that I was wrong, that I was the paranoid, controlling husband she accused me of being. But now, with every point connected, all that remained was a silence full of shame, anger, and a profound, bottomless frustration. Walter asked if he should keep digging. He hesitated. Then I gave him permission to access the browsing history on her personal computer in the study. She never used it anymore. She did everything on her phone. Inside the browser, we found them. Archived messages from her linked social media accounts, including drafts of posts she never sent. In one, Lorelai wrote, "I'm still married, but I only feel free when I'm with him." In another, with Roman, I rediscovered myself. I felt like a woman again. The words jumped off the screen like knives. Then she talked about the kids. She said Asher was cold, just like his father, that Thea was too needy. Unthinkable words for a mother, but there they were, typed by her own hands. The hardest part for me, the part that truly broke me, was finding the draft of a goodbye message, as if she had been planning to leave home all along. She wrote that she loved the kids, but she needed to think about herself now, that living with me was comfortable, but that comfort wasn't enough anymore, that she felt trapped in a life where no one saw her as a woman anymore, just as a mom, a wife, a routine. Walter called. "Do you want me to keep investigating?" My voice was hoarse. "No. I've seen enough." I saved all the evidence onto a flash drive. A small, silver flash drive that held the wreckage of my 20-year marriage. Sabrina made copies of the screenshots. It was like preparing a case file for court, but the trial was internal. The defendant was my own heart, and the verdict had already been delivered. I waited for the right moment. It came one Sunday night. Lorelei returned from another so-called fitness conference. She walked in smiling, an exaggerated sparkle in her eyes, holding bags of free protein bars and branded t-shirts. She was acting like she was living the peak of her life. She talked loudly on the phone as she came through the door, mentioning new followers, potential partnerships, future event invitations. Meanwhile, I sat in the kitchen. The silver flash drive was in my hand. The kids were upstairs in their rooms, pretending life was normal, even though we all sensed everything had changed. As soon as Lorelei hung up, I called her name. "Lorelei." I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. I just spoke firmly. She was still buzzing with excitement. "Oh, Caleb, you won't believe who I met. Do you want to see the photos I took?" "I need to show you something first," I replied. I opened my laptop on the kitchen table. I plugged in the flash drive, and without any introduction, I hit play on the surveillance video. It took Lorelei a few seconds to process what she was seeing. She looked at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. The image was clear. Her and Roman entering that hotel together. The sequence showed them laughing, holding hands. She froze. Her fake smile melted away. She tried to change the subject. "I can't believe this. You've been spying on my life?" I stayed silent. I clicked on another file. The screenshots of the archived messages appeared, the ones where she spoke dismissively about her own family, her own children. "Stop it," she begged, her voice rising. "Stop it, Caleb. You have no right to invade my privacy." I finally looked up from the screen, my eyes locking onto hers. "What you call privacy," I said calmly, "I call betrayal." She started crying, but they weren't tears of guilt. They looked more like tears of anger. Anger at being caught. "You've always been controlling," she yelled. "You never truly supported me. You only wanted a submissive, invisible wife." I let her talk. I let her spin her narrative. I listened as she argued that it wasn't what it looked like. That Roman made her feel alive, desired, like she hadn't felt in years. She said that with me, she felt swallowed by a routine that had erased her. I listened without interrupting. When she finally finished, out of breath and red-faced, I took a deep breath, and I went straight to the point. "If you want this new life, Lorelei, go live it. But you're walking out that door today." Her face fell. This wasn't the reaction she expected. She expected a fight. Begging. Tears. "And you'll look our kids in the eyes when you're ready to tell them the truth," I continued, my voice steady. "Until then, you won't see Asher or Thea." She stayed silent for a few long seconds, expecting me to soften, to give in, to back down, but there was no hesitation left in me. The man in front of her wasn't the same one she'd emotionally abandoned months ago. I had moved past doubt and into a painful, brutal clarity. This conversation wasn't a request for an explanation anymore. It was a decision. I had already closed the chapter inside myself. Now, I was just announcing the end. She started packing. She took a suitcase from the closet. "Some clothes, personal items. I'll come back another day for the rest," she mumbled. I simply replied, "You should give us advance notice, so the kids and I won't be home." She tried one last time. "I still love them, Caleb. None of this changes how much I love my children." I listened silently, but my gaze showed her what I was thinking. Love isn't measured by words spoken on the way out the door. It's measured by actions taken when you still had a choice. Before leaving, she looked around the house. Our house, as if expecting some gesture, a goodbye, maybe even a last-minute regret from me. But the only sound was the door closing behind her. I went upstairs. I called the kids into the living room. I sat with them on the couch, one on each side, and I told them the truth. No embellishments, no invented blame, no attempt to protect anyone's image. I simply said their mom had made choices, and from that day on, things would be different. Thea cried. She buried her face in my shoulder and sobbed. Asher stayed quiet for a long, long time, his jaw clenched. I hugged them both. I told them not to hate their mom, but to understand that no one is obligated to accept lies as part of their daily life. I told them that being sad didn't make them weak. It made them human. And that right there, among the three of them, a new kind of family was being born, with more truth, even if with fewer people. That night, I lay alone in our bed. My bed, the room felt bigger. The silence was heavy, but it also brought a strange kind of relief. For the first time in a long time, there were no more doubts. No more questions. I knew the pain of the truth, but I also felt the quiet power it carried. My life had been destroyed by someone searching for herself, but I still had my kids, my home, a clear conscience, and now, more than ever, I knew I was on the right path. The weeks that followed were quiet, but full of internal movement. I reorganized the household routine. I made grocery lists. I set new agreements with the kids. Asher started helping with chores without being asked. Thea began joining me in the kitchen, something she'd never shown interest in before. The home, even with an absence everyone felt, became lighter. The emotional rigidity that had existed before seemed to have left with Lorelai. In the second month, I received a message from her. She wanted to see the kids. I replied that I'd only accept that if she had the courage to tell them the truth herself, that it wasn't enough to show up with gifts and empty promises. Asher and Thea deserved respect, not a performance. She reacted defensively, accusing me of alienating the kids, but I held my ground. Silence returned. While she disappeared from our routine, I began rebuilding my own identity. I started running in the park again. I reconnected with old friends I'd neglected. I said yes to almost everything. I realized that for a long time, I'd shaped myself to fit the shadow of a marriage where only one side was allowed to seek personal growth. Now, even with open wounds, I was breathing more freely. One morning, Thea walked into my room with a handmade gift. It was a small notebook where she'd written thoughts, pasted photos, and clippings. She handed it to me and said it was a way to remember that even when things change, there's still love at home. I flipped through it with teary eyes. There were childhood drawings, phrases she remembered me saying. On the last page, she wrote, "Thank you for being real." Those words stuck to me like an invisible tattoo. Meanwhile, from what Sabrina told me, Lorelai was trying to maintain her new life with Roman. Her social media showed smiling photos and healthy meals. But behind the posts, the reality was very different. Chase wasn't the devoted man she imagined. Within months, she found explicit conversations on his phone with other clients. When she confronted him, he showed no remorse. He said he'd never promised fidelity. The humiliation was deep. When she got upset, he simply said she was acting like a jealous wife, and that was exactly the kind of energy that made him want to leave. Forced to leave the apartment they shared, her fitness partnerships dissolved. Her followers dwindled. Without Roman, without her marriage, without her prestige, Lorelai sank into an uncomfortable silence. She eventually sent a video message, explaining she'd made mistakes, that she was selfish. I watched it first, then showed it to the kids. Thea cried. Asher just handed the phone back to me. They didn't know how to react. It was too soon. I told them that time would take care of it, that they didn't need to carry hatred, but they weren't obligated to forgive right away. 6 months after the separation, the house had a different rhythm, less pressure, more truth. On a drive back from visiting their grandparents, Asher said something from the back seat that I would never forget. "I used to think we were a perfect family," he said quietly. "Now I see we were just trying to keep everything from falling apart." I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. "Now," I replied, my voice thick with emotion, "now we're an honest family. That's worth more than any appearance." A few weeks later, Lorelai sent one last message. It said she regretted almost everything, except for the day she looked in the mirror and realized she didn't want to keep pretending anymore. I read it. I put my phone in the drawer, and I went on with my day, helping Thea with her homework. Forgiveness didn't require an immediate response. It required inner peace first, and that, I was learning to cultivate carefully every single day.